Most of the time in crypto, you'll only hear people talk about how to make money. You'll hear countless videos about trading, staking, airdrops, and the list goes on and on. Something we need to talk about more often is how to protect the money and assets you make along the way. If you're gonna put in countless hours making life-changing gains, it makes complete sense to have a multi-layered, comprehensive strategy to protect everything you worked for. This might be one of the most important videos you'll watch all year, so let's get it. Welcome to BitBoy Crypto. My name is Ben. Today we're going to be talking about protecting your assets. To start off, understand that asset protection is a deep rabbit hole because it varies from person to person. For instance, if you own a home, run a business, if you're married, if you're employed or even unemployed. Not only that, but the rules also vary from state to state, as they all have slightly different laws and regulations. Despite all the uncommon denominators, I'm going to do my very best to give you all the information you need to take the next step to protect yourself and your hard-earned assets. Also keep in mind, this is not financial advice, but if this video inspires you to move forward with an asset protection strategy, make sure you do so with a qualified professional. Some of you might think you don't need an asset protection strategy, but what if you get sued or get divorced? Or if a crypto exchange tries to claw back your money from you because they went insolvent? Celsius. What I'm saying here is that life happens. And if you want to keep everything you worked for, you need to take this seriously. Before we break the ice on the specific asset protection strategies, we first need to cover one of the most important concepts in this video, and that concept is don't wait till it's too late. I'll say it again, don't wait till it's too late. If you go to employ an asset protection strategy after a lawsuit begins, court is going to define this as fraudulent because you're only doing it to avoid paying the legal judgment. If the court decides that you're attempting to defraud a plaintiff, they could very well put a freeze on all your assets, preventing you from transferring them until the case is resolved. Don't wait till it's too late to get your ducks in a row. Quack, quack. If you have your asset strategy set up before an unfortunate circumstance, you'll be in the clear and you'll be glad that you did it. Of course, I'm not a legal or financial expert, so make sure you speak to somebody qualified to make that decision for yourself. So now let's take a dive into different asset protection strategies. First stop here is an obvious one. Insurance. This here is a large umbrella considering there's personal insurance, life insurance, car insurance, business liability, and the list goes on and on. Keep in mind, it's different for everyone based off your needs. Insurance on its own is a big enough topic to do a whole video on by itself, and even if it's a big headache, you don't want to get caught without insurance, trust me. You want to be well insured because if anything happens, the insurance company is taking the big dent, not you. And as important as insurance is, yeah, it's a good line of defense, but it's not the end-all be-all. It seems that they always try to find some sort of exception to not pay when you actually go to file a claim. So have insurance just in case, but don't rely on it. Another thing worth looking into is homestead exemptions. These protect homeowners from creditor claims against their primary residence. But still, everything else is up for grabs. Two best states for homestead exemptions are Texas and Florida. States like California, Arizona, and New York, well, it varies on how much of your property value is exempt for homeowners. And that's specifically for those who file bankruptcy. In these situations, as long as the value of your house doesn't exceed the limit for the state, you can go bankrupt and still keep your home. If you have a qualified retirement account, like let's say a 401k, these are protected from creditors. And that's great and all, but that's just your retirement fund. What about everything else? At this point, I'm sure you're wondering, what's the real deal here? What's the best thing I can do to protect myself in these volatile situations? This next section is the real meat and potatoes of this video. Before I really dive into it, I want to teach you another phrase you'll hear over and over if you ever talk to an asset protection lawyer. You can't sue what you can't see. The best thing you can do in an asset protection strategy, especially for high net worth individuals, is to distance yourself from your own assets. This way, they can't be taken away from you as long as you have the right safeguards put into place. There's a lot of different ways you can do this. So let's look into a few of them from least effective to most effective. I know everyone wants the most effective strategy, but that's also the most expensive. So I want to be able to cover what everyone is able to do. Step 1, and the easiest strategy, is gifting. 2023, the gift tax limit is $17,000 per recipient, $34,000 if you're married because you and your spouse can both give $17K. You can give $17K to this person and that person, etc., etc. This also isn't just for cash. This could be for cars, land, or anything of value. If you go over the $17,000 limit, you have to report that in a 709 form to the IRS. And the excess reported goes into your lifetime exclusion. Once you exceed your lifetime exclusion, which is $12.92 million, that's when you have to start paying gift taxes. Gift rate is 18 to 40%, depending on where you are and what you're gifting. Only the giver has to pay the taxes, never the recipient, and you have to gift a lot of money to get to that point. If you're going to use gifting as an asset protection strategy, you really have to trust who you're gifting your stuff to, because once you do that, it's technically their property, so be careful. Why gifting works is because it distances you from your assets. This is similar to how people will have their car in their mom's name and their house in their uncle's name and things like that. This isn't a bad strategy, but it's not the best strategy. So say you don't want to use gifting, but you still want to distance yourself from your assets. First, let's start with what you can do inside America. Making a limited liability company or an LLC is a great place to start because the holder or members of the LLCs are not personally liable for any debts the company has. It's not so much about making an LLC, it's about where you make the LLC. Remember, the goal here is to distance yourself from your assets. And in most states, if you make an LLC, your name's going to be all over it. This is why making an LLC in states like Wyoming or Delaware is so important, because these states allow you to make LLCs anonymously. They don't ask who the manager is or who the member is or anything like that. Obviously, you can't set this up on your own. You're going to have to hire a third party to do this for you. Keep in mind, while your money goes into the LLC, your property will go into a land trust. In this situation, you'd use a nominee trust, which means you would be on the chain of the title, but you're not listed as the current owner. The nominee trustee does not have control over the property. They resign their position. You would still be in control, but people can't see that, which is the most important part. For assets like an expensive car, they would go in a personal property trust, which takes your name off the title to that asset. So the LLCs, the land trusts, and all that, well, this is where you start, but it's not where the road ends, because law enforcement or government agencies still might be able to link it to you. This is why you need to put your LLC and everything else inside of a confidential trust. States that allow confidential trusts are Delaware, Wyoming, South Dakota, and Nevada. By putting your LLC inside of a confidential trust, you're removing your name from all of your assets entirely by having an appointed trustee. This completely distances you from your assets because you can't sue through your trustee. Keep in mind, your trustee, aka someone you really trust, could be your friend BitBoy, is in control of the situation. So you have to make sure you carefully decide who in your life is going to be behind the wheel of this thing. And as always, to do anything like this, make sure to talk to a qualified asset protection lawyer. And no, don't really make me your trustee. That was a joke. That's how you can make a multi-layered asset protection strategy inside of America. But the highest net worth individuals in the world, the elites of the elite, well, they'll likely not take this route. They will have an LLC inside of confidential trust, but the difference is they will do it in an offshore account. This is by far the best way to go about this. The 3 best countries in the world to create these offshore accounts are Nevis, Belize, and the Cook Islands. All 3 of these places have very strong privacy laws. They have the most robust asset protection laws in the world, and they're outside of American jurisdiction. And the real kicker here is they have no income tax, no inheritance tax, and no capital gains tax, which is why these 3 places are the ideal situation to have an asset protection strategy. This is the most expensive route, but it's well worth it when you think about someone trying to sue you for everything you have. So say you have a valid asset protection strategy in place, and you happen to get sued, and you lose in court. Now the person who sued you has a judgment against you for, say, $1 million. Guess what? Your asset protection strategy worked. Your assets are shielded, and the person that sued you won't be able to collect the judgment, even if it's outstanding. The catch here is the person who sued you will still have to pay taxes on that $1 million, even if they didn't get it from you. How great is that? That's an unlikely scenario, but that can happen. It's unlikely because lawyers will usually do their due diligence before spending a bunch of money on a lawsuit, sometimes. And they will know if you do or do not have a bunch of assets to your name. That means if you have an effective asset protection strategy, that will deter them from going after you in the first place. Here's the thing. Have you ever heard of a homeless man getting sued for millions? No. And that's because people looking to sue target people with money and assets they can actually take. Can't draw blood from a stone, am I right? So listen, before any of this happens, regardless of the status of your asset protection strategy, before anyone takes you to court, you need to push back as hard as you can. Be as difficult as you can for them to get a hold of. You're not required by law to pick up the phone. You're not required by law to respond to an email. You have to be impossible, even in a clawback situation. If everyone they're going after simply doesn't cooperate, it would be a lot harder for them to claw anything back. Unless they officially serve you and summon you to court, do not voluntarily put yourself in a position for anyone to screw you over. But for the sake of argument, here's a scenario. Say you don't own a home or any assets. You have a side hustle, but you're technically unemployed. And you get sued for, say, $50,000. They summon you to court, and you have no choice but to go, unless you want to make stuff worse. Unfortunately, you lose the case, and because you don't have the money, the plaintiff isn't able to recover the full amount of the judgment from you. In this case, what's going to happen is they're going to plan for you to pay the judgment off over time. The court is going to put a wage garnishment on any job you have, and they'll put a lien on any assets you acquire in the future. Depending on your situation, you could be eligible to file for bankruptcy, which could eliminate or at least reduce how much money you owe them. All in all, you never want to find yourself in this situation. Things outside of your control, well, they happen every day. And you need to be ready for that. Doesn't matter if you only have $1,000 or if you're a millionaire. You need to be well informed about asset protection because there's always someone out there who will try to take it from you. If you have the money for an offshore account, that's great. But for everyone else, make sure to look into the rules for your specific state, talk to a qualified professional. Before I go here, do your best to remember these two important concepts. Don't wait till it's too late, and you can't sue what you can't see. That's all of me you get to see today. That's all I got. Be blessed. BitBoy out.